Hello and welcome to Spectrum Projection, a media review podcast where we analyse characters who may fit into the autism spectrum. I'm Hannah, an actually autistic person with a master's in literature, focusing on the analysis of disability in fiction and in memoir.
And I'm Tilda. And hey, wait, oh god damn it! The neighbour's android is out naked in the garden again.
Trigger warnings in the description. Hey!
Heya!
Finally! A week where we get to do a topic we actually like.
I mean, we've been doing topics that we like. It's just, you forget that happiness exists when you have to talk about the thing last week or last time.
Yeah, when you have to plumb the depths of shitty representation, you don't realise how much it sucks the fucking joy out of your soul.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it is genuinely insane how much that entire thing threw you off your groove for this. Like, even doing this as a topic was hard to come back to.
Because we were talking about CS movie music last episode. Listen to it if you want, I guess. But yeah, I'm just realizing that I'm about to make a very bad pitch for the episode we made when I'm saying that even editing was like a fucking chore more than like anything else. For like, just listening back to us talking about it was just emotionally draining.
Yeah, it's a bad time.
But do listen to the episode.
No, I think the discussion we have is really interesting, but it's a bad time to reflect on. So we're going to reflect on our favourite thing in the world, which is Star Trek.
We've been watching Voyager recently.
Mm-hmm. For the first time, I need to add.
Yeah.
We had no context.
We're watching them in a weird order, because we watched the original series back in university. I tricked Hannah into becoming a Star Trek fan.
God,
I've been a fan since I was about 14-ish. Mm-hmm. I started with the original series because I was convinced that I wouldn't understand the context of the new movie that was coming out then without the original series. And all it did was make me mad at the new movies for, all the stupid character interpretations they did. But then, when we got to uni, I tricked Hannah into getting into Star Trek because I wanted her to be upset about the movies.
Guess what? She thought I'd relate really hard to Spock. Neither of us put together why that would happen. We were both like, yeah, Hannah, you were so convinced I was going to be really sad when Spock died.
Spoilers!
But I didn't know it, so it technically is a spoiler, I guess. I didn't know that happened in the movies, but you were, so invested in getting me, upset.
That makes it sound so terrible.
But it was! You asked. 2016 was a weird year for me for many reasons, as it was for many people. But in that year, I both got into Adventure Zones, I got into fucking Dungeons and Dragons, and I got into Star Trek.
Because it's all coming back to me now. We're going to get to the actual topic, but I need to talk. We need to set context. This episode is complete self-indulgence, so I'm just going to talk about this. I remember our second year, the shittiest university apartment I've ever seen. My parents thought that I was just being spoiled when I was complaining about it, because I grew up in a nice house. That's my backstory, and it explains a lot about how I am as a person. My parents assumed that I was just being kind of, spoiled with having grown up in a nice house. Then they came over to visit, and they were like, oh my fucking god. Because it was horrid. Anyway, sitting on our disgusting couch, covered in a blanket to make it slightly less disgusting, watching Star Trek on our tiny TV, we borrowed the DVDs from the university library and watched them on... Was it a PlayStation or a DVD player? I forget.
It was on a built-in DVD player to the TV.
Yes, yes.
And shit.
Watching these DVDs with those hilarious.
This was before we had Star Trek on Netflix to really access and watch.
Yeah.
This was before all that stuff kind of became the natural choice.
Yeah. Oh, and the DVD menus were the most early 2000s novelty ass.
Yeah, they had the beeping and booping in the background the whole time.
And it was like a CGI recreation of the transporter room. But anyway, I made Hannah watch Star Trek, and I tricked her by saying, it's this silly Camp 60s sci-fi. It's all goofs and laughs. And sometimes there's a serious episode or, some interesting political stuff. But most of the time it's just goofy styrofoam rocks and things that look like penises. And it's all fun and games. And then it was like, we might as well start watching the movies as well. The first one is kind of, mixed, I think
the first one is very much depending on what you want from Star Trek, what you like in Star Trek, you're either going to fucking hate it or you're going to think it's great.
Yeah.
I don't think there's really a middling ground you can have with it, because it is so strongly what it is.
I don't think it's perfect, but I like it. And I was still under the pretense, and I was trying to gently ask Hannah, what do you know about Star Trek? Are there any famous moments from, say, the movies that have been memes, or
My context for this is I didn't know fuck all about Star Trek, not even the new flashy movies that came out. because my whole thing was British sci-fi, and this was not me being like exclusionary. It's just the stories I like in science fiction are very like grounded, real people in sci-fi scenarios type stories. And you got to admit, Star Trek from the Outside is not that.
It's not.
And the things that I liked, my favorite thing and still my favorite thing in sci-fi is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is the most average middle-aged English man gets dropped into a sci-fi story. And I really like Doctor Who in a big way. That was my special interest for my sins for quite a while. So like Star Trek never really interested me because you would admit that the general like consensus, especially since the movies were coming out at that point, the new movies, was that it was like actiony, schlocky, whatever.
Yeah, I guess.
Characters weren't really the selling point.
I never really paid attention to the sort of mainstream opinion of Star Trek, because even like mainstream nerd opinion of Star Trek, I don't necessarily agree with all the time. But anyway, I had also watched Deep Space Nine because a friend I had when I was in like 11th grade or something had the DVD box set. So I watched Deep Space. I didn't want to watch Next Gen because I had like I thought I wouldn't be able to emotionally handle a different crew on the Enterprise. So I skipped Next Gen and watched Deep Space Nine instead, and I really enjoyed it. And then I tried to convince Hannah to watch Deep Space Nine as well. But the problem with Deep Space Nine is that the first episode is fucking unbearable.
This was at the point where we were living in different countries after university, and we were both in a really bad headspace. And you were like, you should try Deep Space Nine, and I couldn't get through the whole of the first episode. And then like a year and a half later, we moved back in together, and you were like, yeah, we'll try it. And then we marathoned the entire series in like a couple weeks.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous.
This was in uni, but keep jumping back and forth in time. In uni, I think it was our final year, Easter break, I was really stressed out. I couldn't sleep. I was at home in Sweden, trying to just emotionally get through things. And I stayed up for something like, I think, 48 hours straight, marathoning Deep Space Nine episodes back to back. I wasn't doing well, but Deep Space Nine kept me company. Anyway, we moved back in together. We finished Deep Space Nine. We both really enjoyed it. I think Deep Space Nine is probably still my favorite Trek.
There's still a lot of things in Deep Space Nine, in case you couldn't tell from the fact that we've already covered 2 separate Deep Space Nine characters. There's still a lot in it that I absolutely adore, and I think it is by far superior to original series and to Next Gen. Spoiler, we are talking about a character from Next Gen, but our opinions of Next Gen might surprise you. I don't like Next Gen. A vast majority of Next Gen I don't like, and the things I like about it, they never do in any significant way, which will come up a lot in this discussion.
It becomes way better in later seasons, but the first few seasons of Next Gen are unbearable.
We literally got warned by a friend, skip the first 3 seasons. We were like, nah, we should have done it.
We should have done it. Or for at least the first 2 seasons. There are some glimmers of gold there, but a lot of it is unbearable. So after we finished after we finished Deep Space Nine, we were like, we should watch Next Gen because, just see what the fuss is about. So I think we had to like really force ourselves to watch the first 2 seasons.
It took like 3 or 4 months for us to get through the first 2 seasons, and there was a long period where we'd seen an episode that was just truly fucking horrendously racist, and we just couldn't take it, so we just stopped watching it for several weeks on end. And then the show picked up and we ended up getting through the next few seasons pretty much back to back.
Yeah, and it got like, I think we joked about like how we've reached the good threshold when we were starting to watch like 2 episodes a night and stuff like that, or at least 1 episode a night. Then we had like a little break, and then we started watching Voyager.
Oh, well, no, wait, you have skipped. We did watch the animated series.
Oh yeah, Lower Decks.
Lower Decks, which is great. And
Lower Decks is really good.
I recommend it quite highly. I was fully convinced it was going to be obnoxious because,
it looks like Rick and Morty.
And it's got like some of the Rick and Morty-esque like adult humor stuff, but they do all the jokes that I wanted them to do, and it's clearly made as a thing of love as opposed to trying to jump in on the Rick and Morty adult animation.
It's clearly made by Star Trek nerds who knows the stupid, obscure things to make jokes about. So we watched Lower Decks, and then we watched Voyager, and we've been just eating this shit up. We've been watching like something like 5 episodes a day.
Yeah, if it's a day where I'm working, 3 episodes. On a weekend, who the fuck knows? There's no stopping
Sometimes
us.
We'll just sit and watch Voyager all day. It gives me everything I want from Star Trek, which is stupid like concepts that are just taken seriously, but like still with awareness of that it's fucking wild, and the most harrowing emotional shit you've ever imagined that is like surprisingly well handled a lot of the time. Sometimes there are some
I will say we're over halfway through. We're like
season 5.
We're like 3/4 of the way through, and of the 3/4 of the show that we've watched, 2 episodes I would say are ones I would not rewatch.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could objectively call them bad. I think I would personally, but I don't think are like bad in the way that the episode that was so racist we stopped watching Next Gen for 6 weeks was.
Yeah, there's one episode that's really fucking bad in Voyager, but that's like the one that I would say like avoid at all costs. But other than that, everything has been pretty damn enjoyable. I love Janeway. She is super cool and super sexy.
I kept making the joke of like, God, Janeway's so hot. Good thing I'm Ace. And now I'm like a good way into the show. I was like, am I still Ace?
You see her in that like white pantsuit, and you're like, ooh. But
She's great.
She is wonderful. I love a lot of the characters in Voyager, even the ones that people don't seem to care about for mysterious reasons that may or may not have to do with their race.
Yeah.
I love Chakotay. I really love Tuvok. I adore Neelix with all my heart, to the point where it genuinely hurts me on a personal level that he's like considered unhated by the fandom at large.
Yeah, he's at the very least unpopular, even if you don't want to go as far as hated, because there are definitely characters who are hated, and I don't know that Neelix would be one of them.
In certain subsects of the fandom, he's definitely despised for reasons that I don't agree with. But anyway...
This is all separate to the things of us saying our perspective on us talking about Data as a character, who is, the focus of this episode, is going to be coloured by the fact we're currently watching Voyager, which was made fucking a good grip after.
Yeah.
And a lot of stuff had happened in the, like, both behind the scenes and in the universe of Star Trek by the time they reached Voyager.
And just in the, like, television, how we tell stories on TV and stuff like that.
Voyager fixes a lot of the problems we have with Next Gen, in terms of like not having continuity, not having emotional catharsis for anything that happens.
Yeah.
Like it's better at like having a continuous story, which is the whole point of Voyager, because it is about them making one specific trip to get home.
Yeah.
Whereas Next Gen, the stakes are muddied at best because they are doing whatever.
You're just faffing about, like going from place to place with dignitaries and stuff.
Yeah, just to summarize,
which isn't necessarily bad, but
just to summarize what Next Gen is about, it is just the same concept as the original Star Trek, which is like people going to new planets and new parts of space and meeting people and going on little adventures, trying to help, I say in massive quotes, trying to help different cultures and trying to like learn as much as they can about the galaxy. It hasn't aged great.
Yeah.
Because if you know anything about colonialism, this is very that. It's so that...
Like, half the episodes they're, escorting some humans who want to settle on a planet somewhere for no good reason other than they love to colonize places.
But our point is, we should probably explain who Data is, just to, like, start out. I don't know if you want to take the lead on describing Data.
You deserve to take the lead.
So, Data is an android, and he's played by Brent Spiner in this role, who does a lot of fucking work in this role that I think is underappreciated.
Putting up with those contacts that are clearly making his eyeballs bleed is like the least of it.
And Data is an android, and how he appears in the show is he is a person. He just has completely white skin.
Like, silvery-ish.
Silvery white, it depends on the quality of the makeup they use.
Yeah.
And like very pale yellowish eyes and really slick hair, and his whole thing is that does not speak in a very like natural way. He does not use contractions, which I've never understood as a thing for androids. And his whole thing is that he wants to be human. Like that's his goal as a character. And no one else on the crew is an android. As far as he's aware, there is only one other android in all of existence who is his brother, and he sucks.
And he doesn't find out about that until like sometime into...
Yeah, they don't do much with
Next Gen.
Yeah. But the point is, Data is very much the outsider on this crew, which is majority human. And even in the ways that it's not human, everyone else there is like passably human and is emotional in certain ways. Because Data's whole core conceit is that he does not feel emotion. He insists that he does not feel emotion.
Supposedly.
He's
very clearly supposed to be the next generation version of Spock.
Who is...
It's not to say that he's like a carbon copy of Spock, because he isn't, but he's clearly supposed to fill that same character archetype.
Of the outsider to the crew and to...
Who is logical and stuff.
The thing I get...
But I guess it is interesting that with Spock, the sort of drama of his character is that he is half human, and he is basically trying to pretend that he isn't. He is fleeing from his humanity. And Data is an android created by a human to resemble a human who is seeking humanity. So that's the sort of dynamic of their characters, is that they are similar in their current state, but they are pursuing the opposite things.
I mean, if you're curious as to why people think Spock and Data are both coded autistic, we watched this really good video essay by this YouTuber called Jessie Gender, who talks about various characters throughout Star Trek's history who have been read as autistic. And they focus primarily on Spock and on Data, but there are also other characters who fit into this, like 7 of 9 from Voyager, who I love. I thought I was going to hate her. She's too relatable. It pains me.
She's great.
But Data's whole thing, and the reason that he's so often coded as autistic, is that he is so unable to process social cues and social situations naturally. It is all a learned process, which is true for autistic people, that like, they can learn to do things and they can learn to integrate, but it is not a thing that comes naturally. And while they're still learning to do that, it always comes across as awkward. And I need to say right now, if you relate to Data the way I do and the way I think you do, sometimes scenes in Star Trek that are supposed to be haha funny times are not good to watch.
Yeah.
They do not treat him well. Even in general situations, like, I have a whole list of episodes that I'm going to, like, touch on when we're talking about Data, but
I have a lot to say, but I'm going to let you take the lead and like slot my points into where they fit rather than just start blabbing incoherently about different things.
I mean, I'm going to start with the fact that Data's like representation in this show made me come up with my own fucking term for a thing that happens a lot with autistic coded characters, which I've decided to call data blocking, which is when somebody asks a question, they like ask, oh, how long will it be until this thing happens? And the autistic coded character, in this case Data, will give exactly the response that was asked for. So they will give, like, the time down to the second. But then they'll be interrupted because apparently that's not what the person who asked the question really wanted. And they won't make any effort to try and explain why that overly precise answer wasn't warranted.
Yeah, they'll just tell them that's enough, but not clarify why that's enough for future reference. The person is clearly irritated by this overly detailed answer, but then they will not explain why it's overly detailed and what level of detail is appropriate for the situation, which means that this issue will only happen again and again because the person has no way of knowing how much detail is required of them.
I mean, it happens so fucking often in this show. Like, it's kind of treated as a running joke with Data. They'll ask him, like, tell us about this planet, and he'll say, oh, it's a class M, and it has this atmosphere, and it has this many life forms, and it has this kind of rock, and they'll cut him off before he finishes, and he'll look a bit confused, but everyone will kind of have, like, a little cheeky smile at each other. So, oh, Data, you're so like this, and it feels disheartening because I've seen it in contexts where the character is just someone who, you know, is hyper-focused on a topic or knows a lot about something, and they'll be cut off because, like, say it in English, please, or whatever, and it's like, they're just describing it to the best of their abilities, and them being shut off so bluntly like that doesn't help anything and just makes them feel like they've done something wrong when all they've done is try and do what you asked them to.
Yeah. It sort of speaks to how old this program is, that they don't seem to even know that there would be a method for, you know, helping Data understand. Like, if he's being asked to give a basic description of a planet or a solar system, why not just give him the parameters of what you considered basic information about a system? Like, what kind of planet is it? You know, 3 sentences about its climate or fauna or whatever, just specific parameters for him to, you know, follow, that he would probably find really helpful. But the writers and the crew of the Enterprise, by extension, don't seem to realize that that's an option that Data would find very easy to follow.
And this, like, I will say our first thing that we're going to say, which maybe fans take issue with. I don't think anyone who I would consider an actual fan of Data's character would take issue with it, but I hate that the show repeatedly insists that Data does not feel. Like, it is a core part of his character that he apparently doesn't feel.
Yeah.
But the way they say it is so technical. It's like, he does feel. He experiences responses to things that happen to him that affect his judgment.
It feels like a very sort of technicality response. Like, well, he doesn't have dopamine or whatever, so that means that he technically doesn't have emotions or whatever.
And it's used as an out for how they treat him all the time. It's like, we're allowed to be blunt with him and we're allowed to leave him out of stuff because he can't feel anything about it. But it's like, yes, he does. He just doesn't express it in a way that affects you in any way.
I think if I were to make my most, you know, if I had to put my money on one guess, I would think that this might be another thing where the writers don't really understand what they're writing. They don't actually know how to write a character without emotions, which means that they will just write what they believe is a character without emotions, which is still a character who is absolutely makes decisions that are informed by emotions. But because these writers don't actually understand what quote unquote emotions are, they fail to see that that's what they're doing.
So I'm going to bring up one of the really big episodes about data, which people consider one of the like best episodes of Next Gen, which is called Data's Day. And it's when the character who's much more prominent in Deep Space Nine, O'Brien, gets married. And this is Data writing a letter to someone who we will come back to because that guy fucking sucks. But Data's writing a letter to someone explaining his day and all the things he does. And all of the things he does in the day that people find kind of uncomfortable and weird, like he learns how to dance and he's trying to learn how to do like banter and he's trying to do all these things for the wedding and he's trying to help Keiko, the bride, from getting cold feet. And everything he does...
After accidentally talking her into having cold feet.
All the things he does, it's like, it's very clearly made from a response of, I don't want people to be upset, and that's an emotional response.
Yeah.
Like, it's bizarre that they keep framing it as like, I do not feel things. It's like, it's a really common autistic thing to like... Everyone has emotions. It's just whether you have emotion literacy or not is a very common thing in autism, where it's like you feel emotions, but you can't necessarily verbalize them or even put them into any kind of context where you know that's what your response is.
Like, you could argue that, maybe Data doesn't want people to be upset because that would lower efficiency. But he never says that. He basically just says, I don't want to upset people because upsetting people is bad, which, again, is a very emotional response, basically.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
but he pursues things that could only ever have emotional, satisfaction. Like the fact that he pursues art, again, no other purpose than, some kind of emotional satisfaction. He pursues friendship, not just like, being congenial with your colleagues, but specifically friendship, which again, there's no reason to do that other than, emotional satisfaction.
Yeah, I mean, it's this thing of like, they make a really big argument out of whether Data is human, because another one of the really famous episodes that we rewatched before doing this podcast, because admittedly it was so early in the shows they hadn't really earned the right to do anything cool yet with me because they'd pissed me off so much at this point.
They hadn't earned my attention, so like I watched that episode in kind of a fugue state a little bit.
It's called The Measure of a Man, and it's where they have a trial to determine whether Data is property or not. Not that whether he's human or not, whether he's property or not. Mm-hmm. And it's completely fair that this is considered one of the best episodes of Star Trek, period. I genuinely
It's a very well-written, well-acted, well-directed episode.
Still hate Picard, though. Not
as much on the second watch, but yeah.
Yeah. But the whole thing with it is that somebody wants to try and do experiments on Data to see if they can replicate the kind of way he works.
Yeah, basically make more Datas. His name is Maddox, and he is the person that Data is later writing a letter to explain his day, to give this roboticist more insight into how he works.
And the thing is, like, if you have issues with, like, medical horror stuff, which I'm, like, morbidly curious with because it is so close to home.
Yeah.
Like, this is not a thing I think you can really, like, play in this headspace of too much, because the entire premise is this guy wants to basically
force Data to undergo, a really invasive experiment that may very likely kill him, just to figure out how he works.
Except him dying isn't on the table for this as much as it might radically alter the way his brain works. Well, it might remove the, like, as he puts it, the texture and flavor of his memories.
No, because what they say is basically they're going to download his memories and have them in the Starfleet data bank, but basically that so if something goes wrong and he dies, they will still have his, ceases to function. They will still have his memories. But Data points out that that's not really the same thing. But the risk is very much that if Maddox fucks up, because he doesn't, the point of this experiment is to figure out how Data's brain works. But if he fucks up, he might completely destroy Data and not be able to put him back together again.
Mm-hmm. And like Data's main concern isn't even necessarily dying, because him having a fear of dying isn't, on the table because he doesn't feel things. But he is very concerned that he will lose the, like, depth of his memories, that he'll lose the, like, contextual meaning around his memories.
Or rather, again, because it isn't a personal concern. He's basically saying that the problem with, just saving my memories to a data bank is that they won't have the full context of them. Mm-hmm. But he's concerned with, destroying himself is that he is, a unique being created by a man with a great passion or whatever, and that it would make the universe lesser if he was destroyed.
Mm-hmm. It's a very roundabout way of saying he has
I don't want to die.
It's like the thing of Data, he talks about this thing of, like, you can read all the rule books. Like, they'd start it off with, like, a whole little thing of them playing poker, And he was saying, like, I read all the rulebooks about how to play poker, but I didn't understand.
To clarify, it's Data and some other members of the crew of the Enterprise.
Yeah, not Maddox. Maddox isn't welcome. But, like, they play poker, and Data's like, I'm gonna nail this. I've read all the books. I know how it works. It's very easy to guess how this is all going to work. And
I've got the statistics on all the winning hands in my brain.
And
then
I got
he loses. My special little hat.
And then he loses. Because he didn't have, like, the social context of, like, learning, like, oh, people can bluff.
Yeah.
People can, like, have misleading discussions and stuff. And I really relate to that, just, like, from my own experiences. It's like, you can go through all the fucking, like, practice and cognitive behavioral therapy, but until you're in the situation and someone is just like, oh, no, this can happen. It's like, oh, no, now I get it. Now I get it.
This goes back to me being weirdly... This comes back to me weirdly enjoying torturing you for some reason, even though we're best friends. There are few things more delightful to me than watching you trying to play a game that involves lying. I feel guilty, but it's so funny to, like, when you try to play werewolf or that, like, Jackbox games.
Yeah, there's a Jackbox game called Push the Button where if you're an alien, you have to fake that you're getting the same questions.
It's werewolf, but in space, basically, and with more mini games. But it's the fact that Hannah finds it so stressful is so funny to me. Oh my god, complete tangent. But this is a self-indulgent episode, so we're allowed to do it. When we played Alien.
Is this about the kissing question?
Yes. So basically, the conceit of this game on Jackbox is that you will get tasks but the alien will get different tasks. So if you get asked a question and you're supposed to rate it between agree, disagree, and neutral, basically.
It's supposed to be super agree, kind of agree, neutral, kind of disagree, really disagree.
Yeah. So the question that people who weren't aliens got was, I forget what it was. Like, would you say that you're a good kisser? So
I didn't know that was the question.
Hannah and another person got that question, and Hannah answered basically super agree.
Like, I didn't see what the question was, but I was like, I'll just hit agree because I can kind of, like, go with it. I think it was like, do you feel like you're a good friend?
Yeah.
So I put agree.
Because it's supposed to be a similar question, so that you have some chance of, talking your way out of it. But because this was Hannah and everyone present were fully aware that Hannah's ace.
Like, aggressively ace.
Yeah. So we had to, like, ask Hannah, do you think you're a good kisser? But we were all, like, so scared of being aphobic that we didn't, like, completely, like, call her on how that's a bullshit fucking lie. Yeah, well, in theory, I think I might be a good kisser. And we were like, I don't know that that's true, but it feels aphobic to say that. So she fucking managed it, even though she answered the most ridiculous thing she could have possibly answered, and she's terrible at lying and finds it super stressful. She managed to actually win that one, I think,
because I played it to my advantage that I was so stressed about lying in general anyway that they just took it as me being flustered about being asked about kissing. But, like, that's the thing, like, in that context, I'm bad at lying, and that's a common, like, thing with autistic people too, but also I was raised Catholic, so, it's all in there. But, like, it's the same with Data in a lot of these situations where it's like, you just do the direct, honest thing, and if it doesn't happen, it stresses you out, because why isn't anyone just doing the, like, clear, obvious, just understandable thing? Why would you do this to me?
Cut this out if it gets too long, but my favorite run of Alien was when I accidentally outed myself as the alien in, like, the first round, but this was a game where there were two aliens, so I basically just spent the rest of the time being openly hostile and just trying to, like, destroy, run out all the timers and, like, misclick and do all this bullshit just so that the other alien would be able to do something.
Just completely distract everyone while you're trying to talk about, like, who do you think it is? And you just be like, hey guys, what's going on?
Who do you think the other alien is? Oh, I think it's me. I think I'm the alien. And again, we won that one.
Good stuff. Play Jackbox.
Play Jackbox.
But my point
Data's trial.
Point is, like, Data's trial is fucking harrowing, and also a thing that I think would have to be done differently now, because a lot of the points they make is, like, Data can do stuff that humans can't do, or Data can be turned off and can have his arm removed, and I'm just sitting there like, surely you got somebody with a prosthetic whose arm can get removed as well. Does that mean they're not a person?
You literally got someone else with a prosthetic on this crew.
Geordie. We can't.
Yeah.
As much as this is a self-indulgent episode, we can't go into a Geordie
All I say
fan club thing.
I couldn't find good t-shirts of Geordie online, so I literally made my own.
But, like, my point is, like, Data's humanity is so much brought into question because of his inability to emote. Like, whether he's a person or not is so based on the fact that, like, he can't emote. Also, Maddox consistently refers to Data as it.
And no one calls him on that except like in the last few seconds.
And whenever they're discussing him wanting Data to do the actual experiment, he addresses all of his questions to Data's captain and faces away from Data. So Data's not even in the conversation about his own ability.
Except for Data is asking him a direct question, forcing him to glance at him, and then he will still turn back to the captain. Again, very well acted. I disrespect the Enterprise crew for not being more aggressive and calling him on his bullshit. That would not fly on Deep Space Nine or Voyager. They would be like, hey, I'm gonna pull you aside. If you don't fucking stop that shit, I'm gonna do some terrible shit to you and no one will be able to prove that it was me.
Dude's pronouns are he, him. Fuck off.
You stupid bitch.
But, like, this is a consistent problem because, like, I think the spiritual successor to that episode is really the one called The Offspring, which is where Data makes his own child. He makes a girl called Lal.
He calls her Lal because it means love, and he's like, but I can't feel love for my child, so I will just name her Beloved. And we're like, Data, you stupid idiot. You clearly love your baby. Shut up.
And he has a lot of similar issues with her as he has, but his entire, like, grounding of why he's doing this is both because he wants to have a legacy, but also because he wants to try and raise her to not experience the same difficulties he did by, like, giving some of this information that, you know, nobody else would have thought to tell him. But because he's lived it, he's like, oh, in this experience, if someone's asking you this, they actually mean that. Or, like, in this scenario, you would have to, like, check this. Like, very, like, stuff you would only need to ask if you are someone who doesn't have social stuff come naturally to you. It does also have one of my favourite scenes in all of Star Trek.
Oh my god.
Where Lal fucking full-on kisses Riker out of nowhere.
Lal is, like, in the bar, I guess you want to call it, on the ship. Just, you know, hanging out, basically being babysat by Guinan, who is one of the most iconic Star Trek characters of all time. I love her. Yeah. But anyway, so Riker walks in. He doesn't know that Data made a baby at this point. So as far as he knows, there's like a new server in the 10 forward.
We need to point out Lal is looks like she's 22.
She looks like a full-on adult. So it's not weird. But so Riker basically comes forward with his, you know, flirty stance, like, oh, hey, you new here. Lal just literally full-on grabs him, pulls him over the counter and makes out with him. Riker is, like, super confused because this is escalating really quickly. Data walks in through the door and then immediately goes to him and say, Commander, what are your intentions with my daughter? And Riker just looks like he's a deer caught in headlight. And I don't even know if he says something, but he just bails. He just walks full on out the bar. He just runs away because he's just too overwhelmed by the confusion in this moment.
But, like, it is one of the best scenes. I feel like, as sad as this episode is, and I struggle to rewatch it because the first time I watched it, I full on fucking bawled.
It's so sad because basically this episode is the sequel where, Again, Starfleet is basically trying to take Data's daughter away because they want to, you know, study her in a lab, and they try to make the argument that he's not a fit parent, basically.
Because he is an android and cannot fully understand, you know, emotions and everything. When the argument here, as it is with many, you know, special needs parents to special needs children, is like, if anyone's going to understand their experience, it's going to be somebody else who went through that experience. It's not necessarily someone who's, like, never faced those difficulties and doesn't have any relation to it.
Also, fuck Picard in this episode for being pissy about Data making a child. Like, it's pointed out to him, I think, several times that you wouldn't have this issue if it was, like, a human getting pregnant, but why is it a problem that Data made a child? It's literally the same thing. And he's like, no, but it's different. And then eventually he comes around to realizing
when it's too late.
But it's that he's being a fucking bitch about this.
Also, Deanna, fucking godsend. Every fucking crew needs a Deanna. I'm saying this with 100% seriousness. Any crew without a counselor is fucked. This is true for Voyager. This is true for Deep Space Nine. They should have had a counselor. They needed a counselor. Deep Space Nine needed a counselor more than it needed a fucking engineer, and that is saying something.
Yeah.
Like,
goddamn.
But the thing is, I love about Deanna, like, Deanna's character is a species, or like half the species, that is an empath. Which is not quite telepath.
Betazoid is what she is.
They're betazoids, yeah. It's a dumb name and I hate it.
Yeah.
But their whole thing is that they can read emotions telepathically. They can't read people's thoughts, but they can read emotions.
No, I think they can if they're full, because her and her mom have, you know, psychic conversations.
Yeah, but her whole thing is that she can sense people's emotions. Mm. And she can't sense emotions in Data, but she still regularly has him come into her office to talk about, like, what he's going through and his experiences and how to deal with things that have been happening to him. And it's like, if that's not an admission of him having emotion, I don't know what is.
There are some great scenes where she will, like, try to be like, and how does that make you feel? I don't feel, counselor. And he's like, And she's like, okay, but how does that make you respond, anything? Like it's so clear that it's kind of arbitrary. Like we need to avoid these words, but the response is essentially the same thing.
Like that blank response of, but I don't feel X, is the same mental block I've seen my brother get when you're like trying to talk to him about something. It's like, so James, did you like the new episode of DuckTales? It's like, I don't like cartoons. It's like, great, you just watched DuckTales. Can we talk about whether you liked it? It's like, yeah, but I don't watch cartoons. It's like, I get that, but you watched this cartoon. It's like the most like stuck in a mental loop thing. Like this is a very common issue with like autistic coded characters and the whole robot analogy. It's really frequent because autistic people frequently have trouble communicating emotion and reading emotion, that they come across as robotic. And there's a whole discussion about whether it's problematic that the only people that autistic people can relate to are androids. And I think that is a problem, but it's a problem that's becoming less so with time. Like, you've got to remember at the point when Next Gen was coming out, Asperger's was not a well-known term, and that's not even the term we use anymore.
Yeah.
Like, it was a thing where people would just... A lot of people who were higher functioning would have the... higher functioning. But, like, a lot of people who, you know, on my level of understanding of autism, would never have understood any context as to why they had trouble with the things they had trouble with. It would have just felt like an innate personal failing.
Yeah.
So to have a character who is going through those same struggles, even if it's for a reason that they are, you know, mechanical...
Yeah.
is something that people really reached out to and felt something.
And also, it is pretty clear that any autistic codingness on data is purely accidental. Like, there is an interview with Brent Spiner that was made recently where he basically said that in retrospect, he is happy that he didn't know that so many, you know, young children, autistic children related to data, because he worries that that might have colored the way he performed or insisted that they wrote data, like that they, not that he would be, you know, offended by it, but that he would want it to be addressed more straight on, which honestly, Next Gen in this year could not handle writing about that in an intelligent, sensitive way. So I am also very happy that they didn't know how autistic data comes across.
Because, like, as a comparison, in Deep Space Nine they have an episode about a character in a wheelchair, and that was very clearly supposed to be a head-on discussion of
a very special episode.
It felt like a PSA, whereas this feels like a general discussion of it. But there are other aspects where being an android does bring up problematic stereotypes of autism. Yeah. There's 1,000 episodes I could bring up, literally dozens and dozens and dozens of episodes, but I'll just like name some off the top of my head, where Data is like insanely smart and can literally outperform everyone else around him in basically all tasks because he is so smart. There's an episode called Brothers where Data's able to fucking hijack the entire Enterprise with the crew still on board and just
he's able to subdue them all without hurting them.
Like, not even knock anyone unconscious, really. Just like, I'm going to the other end of the galaxy with the ship. You cannot stop me. Have a nice day.
Yeah, it's fucked that happened basically because he was like pre-programmed to, like, you know, shut down his free will and go to this one place that his shitty dad wanted him to go to.
And like there's so many other situations where the entire crew is like half asleep or driven crazy or something, and Data's just like, oh, don't worry, I'll run everything.
It makes it feel like it's basically just Data indulging these dumb little fleshies, like, oh yeah, you can play at, you know, running a spaceship, but I could literally do all of this stuff on my own without any of your help, but, you know, you seem to be having fun.
But the thing is, like, they give him all this responsibility, but they don't give him any of the recognition because they don't see him as a person still. Like, there's a subplot in this, like, big two-parter that's got to do with war, this whole war thing, where Data is given command for the first time. He's put in charge of his own, like, ship just for the sake of this battle. And the person who's working under him as his second in command doesn't want to work with him.
Because it's like... Basically, his argument is racism, where he's like, no one would say that a Klingon would make a good counselor, which I would argue is a stupid lie. And so I think that androids are inherently bad at being captains.
And he's like, can I have my transfer now that I've insulted you to your face? And Data's like, point taken. No.
Because statistically, you would be good in this position, and I don't care about your stupid racist feelings.
It's like, this is the thing, though. Like, whenever you have savant characters, there's also this weird underedge of, like, yeah, but we can't give them, you know, the recognition and responsibility of actually, like, being in charge of these things because they aren't really adult, even though they are infinitely more competent at this specific task than their their peers and everything.
Well, to be fair, in that episode, that guy is in the wrong. But also, it's another episode where at first Picard isn't going to give Data command until Data is like, are you not giving me command because I'm a robot? And Picard's like,
I can't prove I'm not.
I can't not give you command without admitting that I'm robo-racist, so I guess you get to have a spaceship now. God damn it.
This is made worse, dislike of Picard is made worse in the context of Data, because the frequency with which Data will fucking throw himself under the bus for Picard, and Picard doesn't seem to really care about anyone on his ship very personally. It's a thing that, again, Voyager is the best one for it. People can have emotions and care about things and show affection for each other.
Next Gen seems to think that being professional means that you're basically an automaton without any real feelings, which is ironic because that's what Data is supposed to be that makes him special. Mm-hmm. When he's... Again, the way they write these characters, sometimes Data is kind of the most emotional of them all. Mm-hmm. There's an episode called Pen Pals, mm-hmm. where Data makes contact with a alien child on this pre-warp planet that is about to basically suffer a cataclysmic disaster that is going to, kill everyone.
I will say, if you don't know anything about Star Trek, pre-warp planet is important in the sense that Star Trek, for Starfleet, they have a thing called the Prime Directive, which is dumb and we hate it. But the thing is, they're not supposed to interfere with any planet that's not technologically advanced enough to be able to go at
quote
warp
unquote
speed.
Handle it, yeah.
So that is their only reason, and Data made contact with this little girl against the rules by accident, and then just carried on doing it for several months
in secret. And basically, he brings this up to the captain, like, "Oh yeah, I have a pen pal on this planet that's about to suffer a cataclysmic event," and Picard's like, "So you've been breaking the rules for months and months in secret?" And it's like, "Well, technically, I didn't technically." Like he's kind of logicking his way out of, technically I didn't have to stop doing it because I wanted to. So
his whole thing is well, I didn't break any rules because no one caught me doing it, and now I'm telling you, so you can't be mad at me.
Basically. And he's like, "I think we should go and help them." And they're like, "Well, that's against the Prime Directive." And he's like, "Oh, and you need to cut off the contact with this alien child." And Data's like, "I understand." Presses a few buttons. "Oops, I am accidentally playing this voice message through the speakers of the conference room of this tiny child, really upset, asking Data, 'Where have you gone? Are you mad at me? Please, I'm so scared.'" It feels...
He guilt trips him so
absolutely
hard.
I refuse to believe that wasn't deliberate. And he was like, "I bet these people are going to have a way more difficult time deciding to leave these people to die if they can hear a small child, because humans are fucking hypocrites who, are controlled by their emotion at the end of the day." They're like, "Fine." And then they go to the planet, Data beams down, and disasters hit. He finds the child, and he's like, "Don't worry." And her family is, all dead. And he's like, "Oh, well."
They're not dead, they're off trying to do something to stop the event, and I don't know if they died or not, but they're just not there.
They're probably dead. They're likely dead. So Data beams back to the Enterprise with the child, and just casually walks onto the bridge holding this small child's hand, and everyone's like, "Data, you're not allowed to do that." And he's like, "Well, technically no one told me not to do it, so I guess it's fine."
He's literally like, "Data, what you got there? Smoothie?"
Again, all his decisions are, very can't be explained by anything other than, being super empathetic and emotional. Where everyone else is like, "Well, the rule says we're not allowed to, so we're not going to." And Data's like, "Yeah, but that's shitty though. That's mean."
That's the thing that I feel really adds to this autistic coding thing. It's people who have trouble expressing their emotions but feel a really deep, uncomfortably powerful sense of empathy that means that anything that feels unfair, they have to act on it even if they're not able to express that feeling.
Yeah.
So common. Happens all the time. There's a number of things where Data's just trying to fit in with things, and people will be like, "Oh, why are you being so weird about it?" And he'll just have this look of complete puzzlement and "But you fucking wanted me to do this. The fuck?" It's... most of it is stuff like small talk. People will say, "Data, you should be better at small talk. It'll help you connect to people." So he will build a subroutine to help him mechanically do small talk, and everyone will be like, why are you talking to me?
Why are you so weird?
So there's literally one of my favourite little bits of character acting. It's a very minor subplot in an episode that I think only lasts a tiny bit. But they go to this reception with all these Starfleet officials, and it's really stuffy and boring. And there's this guy who's well known for just going on and on and on about nothing.
And one of the Enterprise crew kind of makes a joke at Data, if you want to learn about small talk, that's the guy you should study. Mm-hmm. And Data does. So it's basically just a bunch of shots of this, admiral or whatever, just killing everyone with boredom by, talking at them, and he's doing all these gestures and stuff, and cutting to Data, just sneaking around in the background and mimicking his facial expressions and gestures. And it's so delightful. Brent Spiner is like an amazing actor.
If you want to see like how great he is, Starship Mine is that episode. You just need to look up that one scene, because like he's just in the background doing the same like little flourishes and facial expressions and fake laughing to himself, and he does this whole different inflection to his voice when he's doing the small talk that is so fucking funny. It's so great. There's so many episodes like that where like Data will do all these things, like again with the Data's Day one where he's learning to dance, and they say, oh, when you dance you should smile, and he has this really fake, like almost like dead body smile.
Yeah, a horror movie grin.
And like there's other ones as well where Data will like interact with people and will act as though emotions don't affect him. There's an episode called Hero Worship where there's this little boy who goes through a really horrible traumatic event and decides he wants to take after Data because Data can't feel anything and he doesn't want to, you know, experience trauma. So he just goes around mimicking Data all day.
Dressing like Data.
And Data doesn't really know how to respond to that, but like at the end when the kid starts like recovering and like dealing with his trauma and feeling again, like Deanna asks Data, like, do you feel sad that he's drawing away from you? And Data, in the most sad voice you've ever fucking heard, is like, no, I don't feel anything. It's like, you sound devastated. That's a lie.
Oh.
There's just... Also, Data has a lot of, like, little eccentricities that no one else on Next Gen has. Like, this is the thing that we have found so delightful about Voyager, is that everyone has hobbies and interests and, like, little things they do to pass the time when they're not working. And in Next Gen, I think Riker has the trombone,
which is great. I love.
Which is great.
That's what learning that Riker plays the trombone was what made me turn around on his character, because I fucking hated him until that.
I don't even know that I hated him. He was just boring,
really boring. And I was like, he plays the trombone.
He wasn't a sex fiend. I don't know where that fucking stereotype came from. He had one episode which was a sexy time episode, and it was lame.
Yeah, but anyway. But Picard, he likes colonialism, archaeology, and horseback riding.
Supposedly.
But he's a fake horse girl. I think I've said this before, as the daughter of a horse girl, the fact that he doesn't show you two pictures of two almost identical horses and insisting they are super different is proof enough that he's fucking fake. He will be like, oh, well, this horse is really good for riding in the forest because it is white. And it's like, that's it? You're not going to talk about like the temperature of its blood and whether or not it's half or full Arabic or whatever. Arabic. Fake horse girl. I refuse.
Meanwhile, Data likes violin and he likes cats. He has a cat called Spot.
He likes painting.
And he likes poetry. And he has an interest in all sorts of little things. It's amazing how many things he's interested in. His interest in poetry comes up a couple of times. Most famously in the episode Schisms, where he has a poetry reading of his poem An Ode to Spot, which is...
I've never related less to any of the other characters because they will act like this is so weird and boring when his poetries are the most like delightful, touching, beautiful pieces of, personal poetry that I've ever heard.
And like after his the whole plot of that episode is that everyone is like being attacked by a sleep demon thing, so everyone is falling asleep anyway, and Riker like falls asleep in the middle of the poetry reading, and Data comes up to him later, it's like, your hesitation suggests you're trying to protect my feelings, however I have none, so I would prefer you to be honest with me. I have said that shit to people before. Like, not that I don't have feelings, but like, this is wasting my time. Can you just tell me what you actually mean?
Yeah. I want criticism to help me improve, so just be honest.
And also, like, this is a side tangent, but it's a side tangent that needs to be said, because one of our favourite episodes of all time is one where an Ode to Spot comes up again, when Data's brain starts malfunctioning because he connected to the ship computer, and he gets downloaded into a Cowboys program.
Oh, fistful of Datas.
Yeah.
So basically, a bunch of the hologram characters get replaced with Datas.
And not Data acting like Data, it's just
Brent Spiner acting as the characters, and it's fucking great. Again, with Brent Spiner having an amazing range. It's like him just playing the villains in this hologram program, and also one of the barmaids, and he's just so fucking good and funny.
And also, my favourite Brent Spiner delivery in the entire show, except for like a thing I will come to, because Spot is a big deal for this, because of course he has emotions. He cares about that cat so fucking much.
That stupid horrible cat that everyone else hates.
when Spot gets up on his desk in the middle of him like having this programming problem,
working on the computer,
and he's like, "Vamos, you little varmint!"
Because one of the things that real Data, is bugging out and starting to talk in cowboy speak. That's how they notice that something is wrong with him, because he randomly says "Yeehaw, motherfucker" or something like that.
No, he doesn't swear.
Like, Data, what the fuck? What are you talking about? Like, he doesn't remember saying it. You said yeehaw.
He just starts talking in a southern drawl, and everyone's like, "Is that right?
Is that right? Are you supposed to do that?"
But also, when Data learns how to dream at one point, like,
and the word "learn" is doing a lot of work in that sentence. Tell us how does Data acquire the capacity to dream?
I will come back to how he learns the capacity to dream, but I'm bringing it up because when he starts getting worried that his nightmares are going to make him into a bad person, he asks Worf to look after Spot the cat, and he stops in the middle of leaving Worf with this cat and giving him like a million directions to say, "You must tell him he is a good cat and a pretty cat and pet him every day, so I will feed him."
Perhaps that will be sufficient.
But like,
again, with so much like tenderness and emotion, and it's like, I know this is supposed to be like a funny haha, and it is, but also like, how can that not be an emotion?
Like, it's just Data expresses emotions about specific things he's really passionate about. It's like, and if that ain't me, I cried over an episode of Dimension 20 today. I know what I can be emotive about.
Oh my god, I just realised, like, guys, that's a fucking nerd.
Fuck off.
This is so embarrassing. What?
Fuck off.
Huh?
I like D&D and I like Star Trek. We've reached this point in my life. But anyway, when Data learns to dream, what actually happens is it's a crossover with Deep Space Nine with our previous guest, I guess.
Previously on Spectrum Projection.
Bashir shows up, and this is from early in Deep Space Nine before they've really figured out his character.
Yeah.
And he's fucking about.
He's introduced basically. Data walks into one of the medical labs or whatever, and there's just this stranger hanging out there with some weird piece of technology, and Data's like, are you authorized to be here? And Bashir's like, hi there, stranger. Do you want to check out this crazy thing I found on the other side of the wormhole that's central to Deep Space Nine? And Data goes over like, ooh, and then he goes, hang on a second, you're not supposed to be here. Are you authorized? And Bashir's like, I'm from Deep Space Nine, I'm their chief medical officer, it's fine.
And then with
anyway, are you Data? Wow, you're super cool and famous.
Also, fucking autistic solidarity, because the second Bashir meets him, unlike every other asshole who meets Data and starts saying like, what are you built of? How do you work? He's like, does your hair grow? That's so weird. Sweet.
Do you have a pulse? Why do you have a pulse? Why do you breathe? That's so crazy.
How come you blink? And Data's just like, I never thought about that. And then also Bashir compliments him on his actual work, which, is the difference.
Yeah.
Like, it's nice when people just, like, focus on what you have done as opposed to, like, oh, I heard you're autistic. It's cool that you've also managed to do something. He's just like, Data, you're really smart and cool, and I appreciate the work you've done.
And he's like, it's so cool of your dad to be able to build a sentient robot, but...
That's nothing to do with you, but it's cool that he managed it.
But anyway, so Bashir manages to rope Data into examining this piece of mystery medical equipment, supposedly. They take it down to engineering, and because the Enterprise only has one set for engineering stuff, they're fucking about with this mystery piece of technology right next to the warp core, which if it explodes will kill everything in the system, basically.
Yeah, it will create essentially a black hole if they
not a black hole, but basically a space nuke.
Functionally a black hole. Like everything around them will fucking die.
And Geordi is there as well, helping out. And the machine, something happens, and Data gets shot in the stomach with a space laser and just is out cold on the floor.
And that accidentally activates his capacity to dream.
You know how it is. You get fucking shot in the chest and you grow another brain lobe. And
dreams are all like imagery and stuff, and Data has trouble like comprehending what it means. And he goes through this whole like self exploration thing of like painting the images from his dreams and trying to like talk about it. And in the end, he decides, I need Bashir to shoot me in the chest again with a fucking space laser so I can do it again.
His best friend Geordi's like, are you sure that's a good idea? And it's like, I really want to dream though. And it's like, fine, I guess.
But like that like yearning for understanding yourself, I get it.
Yeah.
Like, I totally get it. And apparently it was just a thing that like Data's shitty creator built into him. It's like, you'll get there eventually. And
but he put it behind like a paywall where it's like, you need to be this human to dream.
Because Data's it's a plot point I disagree with, but like Data literally has like a chip that his dad made that he could put into his brain so he could start to feel emotions. And like the dream thing was like locked behind, if you are like comfortable enough with your emotion chip, then you'll be able to dream. but that never happens because of Data's shitty identical twin.
As a triplet, do you relate to having a shitty twin who tries to kill you and your friends and steal part of your brain that your dad made for you, but like uninstalled because he was afraid that you would go crazy if you could feel things?
Who's to say I wasn't that twin? Who's to say I'm not the Law of this situation? But Law steals the brain chip at one point and puts both of them in his brain and becomes evil crazy, which it's dumb. I don't like it.
And has like double emotions, because the problem with him was that he had emotions and that made him turn evil because their dad fucking sucks and Law had the emotional capacity to hate. And
Law was his first draft, and Law could feel and could emote and ended up betraying a bunch of people to this evil space snowflake that killed them all. And then Sung was like, okay, so version 2. What if I just made him unable to feel anything? Would that improve his quality of life? And the answer to that question was no, but he did nothing about it.
And also, you failed to create a being without emotions, because he clearly has emotions. You just made him unable to understand them.
Elephant in the room, we will probably not be talking about anything from the movies because they suck and they're bad.
I don't want to watch them because of things that happen.
I watched some of the scenes with Data from the movies before this podcast, and none of it's relevant to our discussion, because except for the fact that they keep doing the things that I think would be really interesting for Data's storyline, but they keep doing them without really pausing to think about any of the emotional or psychological aspects of them. They just do them because it looks cool. Like, Data's whole thing of, I want to be human, and then he becomes, like, part human when he's with the Borg. And there's no fallout to that. There's no emotional consequence to that.
He just looks like a Frankenstein.
Yeah, I mean, it looks cool.
Sure.
Doesn't do anything for his character. But, Data's whole thing is that he's kind of hiding behind the fact that he can't feel for a long time. Like, a lot of the things he does in the show, he excuses by saying, well, I can't feel, so that's why it's fine that this is happening. Yeah. Like, when he goes through the whole Maddox thing, when he gets abducted by someone who's trying to collect, like, super valuable, rare things.
Who treats him like literally objectifies him and just, treats him like a piece of property again.
Like, he wants him to sit in an exhibit for all the rest of time.
Mm.
And Data doesn't want to, but, like, the whole argument that ensues is like, well, you can't feel anything, so what does it matter if you just do what I tell you to do? He always hides behind that excuse. And I think there is one episode where they finally fucking do the thing I wanted them to do with it, which is, like, him addressing the fact that, like, he's using his supposed absence of emotion to excuse what he's doing, is in one of the very late episodes where Data does get an emotion chip from Law, and he abducts Geordi, Deanna, and Picard. And he starts doing experiments on Geordi, which are really fucked up.
It's a really well done scene, but it's really fucked up because, Geordi is basically trying... But basically what happens, Lore gives him emotions, but he only gives him negative emotions, and kind of brainwashes and manipulates him into turning evil. And so Geordi is doing experiments on his, comrades and friends. And Geordi says shit like, if you ever go back to the way you were, you're gonna fucking hate yourself for this.
And Data ends up pausing for a while and, like, having to go to Laura and being like, hey, this seems bad. I don't want to do it anymore. And gets, like, forced into it. Again, Picard does fucking nothing to end this situation. Great for him.
To be fair, at that point he can't because he's in fucking...
space jail.
Yeah.
But Data and Geordi's relationship, I think, is really key.
I love them so much. They're so sweet. And it's sad that, Data explicitly says that, oh yeah, Geordi's my best friend because he was the first person who ever treated me like a person. And it's like, Data, that's fucked up. You'd been in Starfleet for, like, decades at that point.
Yeah, it's bad. It's a bad sign. Also, Geordi, thank fuck.
Thank God for Geordi.
A lot of my favourite scenes with Data do also involve Geordi. More of the stuff with, like, him really caring about Spot. And I would argue the most emotive scene of Data, it's not sad, it's not even happy, it's when he's trying to train his cat to do things.
And Geordi walks in, like, middle of this sort of plot line. It's the B plot of an episode where they have, like, a weird environmental metaphor thing.
Yeah, it's called Force of Nature.
But the B plot is just Data and Geordi desperately trying to train Data's cat into behaving. So Geordi walks in and he's like, oh, how's the training with Spot going? And Data, has this sort of look in his eyes where, like, blank face, but behind his eyes he's violently frustrated where he goes, I have not been entirely successful. And you telling me he doesn't have emotions when you can see, like, the fucking fires of frustrations burning behind his yellow eyes?
Like, with him and Geordi, it feels like a lot of their scenes are him, like, being able to open up about the emotions he does feel in some like personal way. Like their whole
being able to ask questions like straightforward. Like there's a bit where talking about Star Trek plots where you only want to talk about specific moments is so wild because you need to brush past the most crazy pieces of context. Basically, they find out that at some point Data is gonna travel back to the past and die. But they don't know when it's gonna happen or how it's gonna happen. They just know that Data will be dead one day. And obviously the rest of the crew is fucked up about it, and Data doesn't get it. So it's him and Geordi in the bar, and Geordi's like, so do you want to talk about, your death? And Data's like, not particularly. Pause. Do you want to talk about it? And Geordi goes, yeah!
Yeah, it's fucked up.
It's fucked up. And it's such a nice interaction because Geordi will understands that Data doesn't mean anything bad by being the way he is. Like, he just literally doesn't understand, and if he wants to understand.
Yeah, it's the similar thing where there's a point where Geordi's mum goes missing in space and is dead. Like, people have just decided the search is off, it's been too long, she's dead. And
but Geordi is having again, Star Trek context. Geordi, because of his, blindness and being wired with a visor, he can be plugged into a machine that lets him virtual reality control a robot that's going into the wreckage of this ship that is on, Poison Planet or whatever. But the problem is that it can physically hurt him when things go wrong with the machine. But he's seeing visions of his mother in the poison gas in this thing, so he keeps wanting to go back, plug into the machine, and be able to see and talk to his mom. And everyone is like, you can't do it anymore, it's going to give you brain damage. And he's like, yeah, but I want to. I need to know what happened to my mom because I want to save her. And so he's trying to do it, and Data walks in and he's like, hey, what are you doing? You're not allowed to do that. And he's like, Data, please. And he's like, well, don't stop me from doing this. And he's like, well, technically you haven't done it yet, so I can't stop you from doing something that you haven't done. I can't reprimand you for doing something that you haven't done, so I guess I'm not going to stop you, and I also am going to help you. And it's like, that's emotion, Data, you idiot.
Also, it has one of my favorite little quiet moments, which I think is supposed to be played as a joke, but I do love it, is when Data is observing some alien poetry, which is just 3 hours of silence.
Yeah, he's sitting in front of a computer with a black screen. Geordi walks in and he's like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm reading poetry. Geordi looks at the screen. There's nothing there. And he's like, yes, in this culture, they have great times of silence in their poetry.
And he invites him to, would you like to come and enjoy this silence with me? And fucking, that is the most romantic thing I've ever heard in my life.
It's so beautiful. And
it's clearly played as a joke, but as someone who has studied literature, it's very sweet, it's very poetic, it's very emotional in a way that's I can't put emotions into tangible sense, but I can feel them, and this silence is helping me feel them,
Exactly.
We've been talking for so long already.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of little moments between Geordi and Data of Data trying out emotional stuff and it falling kind of flat, but Data being the one person who's chill enough where he feels like he can take that risk and try it.
Yeah, Geordi, you mean being...
Data can take the risk of trying the social thing with Geordi.
Yeah, because Geordi is safe. Early on, we watched this clip recently because it's really funny, where it is in the super duper racist episode.
It's called The Code of Honor.
Let's not talk about it, but there's a bit where Geordi is, hanging out in his room without his visor for some reason. I forget plot reasons. And Data walks in and he's like, I've been practicing comedy. It's like, oh, and Geordi goes, oh no, and tries to walk away, blind, not being able to see anything, tries to exit the room. And Data gets in front of him to block his exit and starts pushing him, walking him back towards the wall to tell this horrible, stupid pun. And Geordi just shakes his head, and Data just shakes his head. It's like, oh, that wasn't successful.
And Data literally says, I've told you 670 jokes. Why have none of them worked? And it's I have done that to you before. It's I said this thing today. Was this funny or were people making fun of me?
And the fact that Geordi, has been through this enough that he can just tell immediately, the Data is about to unleash some horrible pun on him, that he goes, oh no, and tries to escape.
And it's not even that the pun isn't funny, it's that Data's delivery is always completely flat. There's no tone to it.
But also nothing. The pun isn't that funny.
Mm-hmm. But also, my thing that I want to say is Sherlock Holmes. I don't like how they handle the Sherlock Holmes stories in Data's things, because I'm a Sherlock Holmes purist, and also because they always fucking get out of the interesting bit. But the fact that Data likes Sherlock Holmes so much and it's another, like, autistic icon is just, like, parallels within parallels, baby.
And he loves playing Sherlock Holmes dress-up with his best friend Geordie and going on Sherlock Holmes adventures in the holodeck.
It's just so sweet. Oh, gosh. It's just, with Data, I think, overall, he's a character who can be really good to you personally. If you are autistic, if you want to find someone you can relate to, with this, like, sense of being an isolated outsider who is doing their best and everyone still feels like you're doing wrong, it will kind of ruin your perspective of a lot of the other members of the crew. There's very, like, even Geordie has one or two moments, more with Barclay than with Data, where I'm just like, this is unnecessarily mean. Like, he can't help it. He's just Data. Stop it.
Stop being mean to Data.
I'm gonna defend my guy. He's my guy in there.
That's my little guy. That's my little robot friend.
And Voyager, I wish. Next Gen in general, I'd say is worth watching, but it's not the easiest thing to get through. And if you want to watch it, there's definitely ways, like, there's definitely guides on what to skip that you should look into first. Because there's just huge chunks of it. Yeah, it does not link together in the way you would hope it would.
For your own sake, don't be a completionist about it, because a lot of it is horrible to sit through.
Mm-hmm. A lot of the stuff we liked about Deep Space Nine seems like apologies for things they did in Next Gen. Specifically,
same thing with Voyager.
Specifically all the stuff with the Bajorans, and also how they talk about Native Americans. Those both get fixed in later series. Somewhat, at least.
Somewhat. Yeah, sorry that we were super racist and shitty to you guys. I can't believe that they managed to be, like, horribly colonialist and racist to the fictional race of people they made up. Mm-hmm. Like, the Bajorans, the Bajorans, it's fucked up that they're being, oppressed by the Cardassians, but they're being kind of unreasonable.
And it's like, this is so transparently a metaphor for the Holocaust. You shouldn't be doing this.
Or at least, it's kind of horrible warfare and, one dominant military force trying to suppress and oppress a weaker, people.
Yeah, there are definitely moments later on with the Bajorans, because I find that very interesting, and it's not relevant to... They do introduce Bajorans in Next Gen, but to be honest, they don't really know what they're doing with them yet. Yeah. But, like, I don't know, there's so many things they get better with over time, and it's my deepest, sincerest wish that they would have another android character in Star Trek to try and, like, really go into the things that they wanted from Data. Because his ending, spoiler alert, he just fucking dies for Picard, is really unsatisfying, because, like, he's the only one of the characters who has a really clear arc of, like, I want to be human, and that never goes anywhere.
Because obviously he can never be a human, because he wouldn't be himself anymore, basically. Which I guess that's in the autism metaphor, that's kind of interesting. Like, he's basically a person who has the goal of being, neurotypical, but it should be self-evident that he can't reach that goal, because he wouldn't be the same person, if he somehow got transmuted into being a human.
Well, they even say that really fucking early on when Q first shows up, because
it's sort of like
Q's whole deal is that he can give people anything, like he literally has infinite magical power.
Yeah,
or
not magic, because it's not magic.
It's science.
Like science fiction.
It's fucking magic. He's a genie. Q gives Geordie sight for a second, which was also shit.
This is like really early when they didn't know how to fucking write characters.
But he offered to make Data human, and then Data was like, no thanks. And I'm just sitting there like, what do you want then, Data? What do you want?
Like, either I think that it's supposed to be like, it's the goal isn't the goal, it's the journey or whatever. But it's like, that's stupid. Like, his goal should be to be, comfortable with who he actually is, rather than trying to pursue something that everyone, including himself, knows is unattainable.
Like, it's not even the thing of, like, I think it's fine for his goal to be to become human, but his journey has to be him doing what you've said of, like, becoming comfortable with knowing that he is not human. Also, the whole human terminology in this show is dumb, because they keep going on about Data isn't human. It's like, neither's Worf. What the fuck are you talking about?
Like...
Worf is a Klingon. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's like so... Yeah.
Start using the term Terrian instead, which means Earthling, and then it just gets more complicated, because it's like, this is all meaningless.
The Terrarian, whatever, Terran, I guess, thing
Terraria
makes it more confusing, because then it's like, so is that like us saying, like, you're not ethnically whatever, but if you are born and if you're a Klingon who's like born and raised on Earth, are you a Terran?
Technically, Worf is a Terran.
Because he was raised on Earth by humans. No, it shouldn't even matter if that it was by humans. He definitely has like Earth citizenship, if that's still a thing. So isn't he a Terran then? Because he's from Terra.
Look, our point is all the rules around Data seem bullshit because every single reason they bring up as to why he doesn't count as a person is
applies to other characters.
And they never acknowledge that. They never acknowledge it. It's like, but Data doesn't have entirely organic parts. It's like, neither does Geordi. It's like, Data's not human, neither's Worf.
Data doesn't have emotions. Vulcans!
What the fuck are the Vulcans doing then? You guys fucking worship the ground Spock walks on.
You people are so goddamn stupid.
This is our point. This is our very self-indulgent Data episode. We do adore Data. I really do. I love his character, and I do.
So many times when we were just like watching Data scenes, squealing in delight, literally.
We watched a supercut of Data just being really dry and like ice cold with people,
unintentionally often, but that makes it even funnier. But like you have moments like that when you will like accidentally drop the rawest most searing take, and you
like
don't
the
even
Chernobyl thing.
Yeah, like what the fuck.
I call it tired Hannah when my ability to mask slips somewhat because I'm tired.
It's great. I do unironically love it so much. And I love it when Data does it. Seems to me like you're being a fucking idiot right now. It's like, no offense though, I literally can't be, mean because that's not in my programming. It's like, no, I know, but it still hurts. Just being honest.
There's a whole bunch of stuff like this interactions he has with characters like Worf who are really aggressive, and he'll do something that seems like quite sweet and normal, and it will just piss Worf off so bad. And he's just like, well, I don't emote, so I don't even notice that you're mad. It's like, you can read emotions, dumbass. You know what you're doing. You can pretend you don't, but you know. Oh, we should probably call it, huh?
Yeah.
We could go on forever. If you want us to talk about Data more, please tell us, because we will do it. We will do it for free. And we will come back to characters from Voyager who I want to talk about as well.
Desperately.
I want to talk about Seven. I want to talk about the Doctor.
The Doctor! Oh yeah, update on that thing we talked about in the Bashir episode where we were like, I hope the Doctor isn't like the guy who created him. Because basically the engineer who made the medical hologram
showed up in the Bashir episode, yeah.
He's a creepy lech. And then in Voyager, we get to see the hologram version of him, who is, thank God, basically a completely different person, who is a delight, and I love him to pieces.
Yes, he's so great. I do adore him. All of the side episodes with him fucking break my heart. All of the adventure episodes with him are the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life.
We have to make a whole episode of him. But
we will. Okay, I'm sure when we talk about 7 of 9, we will talk about
absolutely. Do you want to end this before we go on another tangent?
Yes. Next week, something not Star Trek, I'm sure. But not next week, next fortnight, something not Star Trek, I'm sure. This was Spectrum Projection with your hosts, Hannah and Tilda. Our theme music is Summer Longing by Tilda. Send us suggestions for future topics to spectrumprojection@gmail.com or to our Twitter and Facebook pages at SpecProjPodcast. Bye!
Bye! You were supposed to say it first!
Oh no!